Thank you for joining this talk on mathematical poetry in Mathematica. My name is Anne-Marie. I am a student at the Rhode Island School of Design, and I used to be a Wolfram Alpha developer. And today I'm going to share some of the work I've been doing using Mathematica to write mathematically inspired poems. And most of this work was inspired by some workshops I attended that were held by the Ouvroir de littérature potentielle, the OuLiPo, which is a group of writers who develop mathematical poetic forms. So I'll show you some examples of their work, some examples of my work, and how I'm using Mathematica to write poems. Okay, so the OuLiPo, this roughly translates to the workshop of potential literature. It's a group of writers, and it was co-founded by a mathematician, François Lyonnais, and a writer, Raymond Queneau, in 1960. And that idea of potential literature is, as far as I understand it, it's that they develop structures or constraints or formats for writing that can then be used for any writer. So like potential literature that can be written in the future. And many of these constraints are mathematically inspired. I have a couple examples of some of the work that has come out of the OuLiPo. This is a work by Raymond Queneau, one of the founders. 100,000 billion poems, all fit in a single book. It's an exercise in combinatorics. It's a book of 10 sonnets, and they all have the same rhyme scheme, and they're written on strips of paper. So you can interchange the lines of the poems, and you get 10 to the power of 14, or 100,000 billion poems, all potential poems in this book. And it would take more time to read all those poems than you have in your life. Another example of work by the OuLiPo from the other founder, the mathematician, is this poem with 0 words, which I will not attempt to read, but I'll let you enjoy reading this poem with 0 words before we move on. Okay, so it takes like not 0 time to read a poem with 0 words. So now I'll talk about some of the things that I've been exploring and working with. When I attended the workshop, one of the topics was this idea of measurement, bringing measuring to literature and verse and poems. A lot of the work that they do conceptually is related to this interplay between mathematics and other natural sciences and literature and the arts. And often in math, and we have this idea of measurement, and how does that translate over into something that's more subjective and creative and expressive. So one of my favorite ways of incorporating some notion of measurement into verse has been just taking the letters of the alphabet and their indexes. You've got in the English alphabet 26 letters, so you've got the numbers 1 through 26. And then you can use those indexes to measure lines in various ways. One of the fun things that I've been doing with the alphabetical indexes of letters is hiding messages in poems, hiding messages in the structure of poems. So here's an example of how I would think through this in code. And when I'm writing these poems, sometimes I'm writing in paper, but oftentimes I'm like writing in a notebook and just like coding it as I go. So here I've got the word secret. I want to hide the word secret in a poem. So I take the alphabetical indexes of these letters. S is the 19th letter in the alphabet, E the 5th, and so on. And these are going to define the lengths of my lines in my poem. And I'm going to measure the lengths of the lines by the number of characters. So I wrote this little poem, count my characters. Every new line of some poems hides an unapparent letter. And indeed, I can check that the lengths of the numbers of characters in each of these lines matches the alphabetical indexes of the letters in the word secret. So the word secret is hidden in this poem. And I used Wolfram Language also to write the poem in the sense that I can also find words that meet the criteria that I need. So here I knew that I wanted this line to have 20 characters. I wanted it to say a blank letter, so I needed an adjective. So I've got a part of speech is an adjective. I wanted this word to start with a vowel, so I could have the N attached to this and so on. So I can use word list and find options to fill in gaps in my poems, and that's how I can, you know, have a little help meeting these constraints that I'm setting. Another way that I was having fun using alphabetical indexes was calculating the value of a string based on the values of each of its letters. So just adding up the values of the characters in a string. Here, apparently the value of what is the value of this string is 338. And this inspired me to write this poem. Here's the way I've formatted it, and I've shown the string values. Here, I'll hide that so we can just read it. It's this poem. I'm going to read it, and then maybe you get a sense. It's a poem. This is a poem about math, about a mathematical concept, or sort of a mishmash of concepts. Untrained identity. Each word that you say sets me back feeble to zero. I climb up and up, solemnly reaching, and arrive headfirst at the bottom. And in this emptiness, I'm told, lies my fated self, central, abundant, changing nothing, confined to a limited alphabet of dear friends disappearing. And this poem, which I'll spoil for you, is about identities, like in the group theoretic sense. So the idea of an additive identity and things that accumulate and reach towards zero, like in the sense of a finite group. And I have the structure of the poem in terms of the values of the characters according to their places in the alphabet, mirroring this additive identity, because on the left and right of this central zero additive identity, the values of the strings are equal. So sort of playing with its idea of canceling out emptiness, adding things up and getting zero. There's also like a little calculus there. I also like plotted the values of the strings as sort of visualizing like a definite integral, and you have like a canceling out of accumulation. And there are lots of ways that these mathematical concepts can be interpreted emotionally, expressively, poetically. I think it's kind of fun. Okay, I have two more examples of poems that I've been working on. This is a project that I was doing. The theme that we were introduced to in the OuLiPo workshop was recreation, which intentionally is both recreation, like having fun, and recreation, like creating again, because they often will take an existing text and pull pieces of it, rearrange them to create something new. And so this example of recreation is a structure called the avion, that means airplane in French, so it's a nice choice of word, but it is, the title of this structure is an example of itself. So an avion is an abbreviation of a word taken by taking sequential characters from the word. So for example, AVIONS, avion is an avion of the word abbreviation. So with not that much code, you can find an avion. Here again, I'm using word list, so I can look through all of the subsets of sequential letters in a word and find all of those that match the lists in word lists that are in Mathematica. So for example, here, I'm looking for all the avions of the word mathematical. Here they are, all of them. And then I have a little extra display function, the code at the bottom of the notebook that will show them within the base word that we're recreating from. And I guess, is this a poem? I don't know, just the word mama as an avion of mathematical. Maybe that's a poem in and of itself. I was playing with this idea of recreation and picking a source text with kind of like what I assumed is kind of like the most canonical English language source text for poems, which is Shakespeare. So I wrote a community post. Hope you can see it. Let's see. Where I went through all of Shakespeare's sonnets. There are 154 of them. And I found all of the possible avions of the sonnets that had a specific form. VERS, vers, is the French word for line. I don't love this. This is what I named this form because I'm taking a letter from every line of every one of Shakespeare's sonnets to create an avion throughout the sonnet. So here, sonnet number 1, ridiculousness, is a possible avion in this extra constraint. And yeah, I made a website where you can see all of them. It's linked to somewhere in this community post if for some reason you want to see every single possible avion that takes one letter from every line of all of Shakespeare's sonnets. That's now online, so you're welcome for that. Let's see, let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so one last example of a mathematically inspired poetic form. And this one is in the category of visual poetry, so a poem that looks like a thing, not just like text with line breaks. This is what this style of poem looks like. It's called a rumb, or rum, maybe in English. I did this workshop in French, so I don't always know how things are pronounced in English. A rumb is a rumb line is some sort of tool for navigation and like measuring or orienting yourself in directions. And so a rumb poem is written about the place where you are writing the poem. So you place yourself somewhere, then you look in all of the, 8 cardinal directions around you, and you write a line that describes what you're seeing, with the added constraint that the length of the line you're writing should be roughly proportional to the distance between you and the thing you're describing. So this, another way of sort of measuring lines, but in physical distance according to where you're sitting. So this is one that I wrote when I was sitting at a cafe in France. And I think that it works really well to display this shape in using Mathematica and Wolfram Language code. You can use your, I've got my rotate right, I've got my little angles around the center, and I can create this visual poem. So that's the last example that I have to share. And yeah, I would be really happy to hear from anyone who's interested in this type of thing. I think that collaborations or overlaps between creative projects and mathematical projects are really exciting and often kind of hard to find. Yeah, I think poems and poetry is definitely a useful and important way to interact with math and mathematical concepts and mathematical thinking, and vice versa. And I think that I'm assuming that most people here are mathematicians or scientists of some sort, and I think we all probably have had an experience of the poetry that is inherent in math and in formal thinking. And I'm trying to find ways to explore that and express that are playful and accessible And I really thank you for attending the talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can look at the chat. And if you have any questions in the Q&A, I'd also be happy to answer those. Okay, one good question. How many syllables are in the word squirrel? Squirrel. Squirrel. One. And I think you can make your own decision as long as you keep it consistent within your own poems. Or maybe you could just switch it up and use it as like a wild card. Maybe if you need to, you know, get a little, take some poetic license. They call it poetic license. Squirrel, squirrel. And there are no rules in poems. Okay, next question. Are your sonnet avions all 14-letter words, or are they word phrases with a total of 14 letters? I really like this question. The answer is yes, mostly. So there are 2 of Shakespeare's sonnets that don't have 14 lines, but they're still classified as sonnets. So there's a 12-line sonnet and a 15-line sonnet. So for those, the avions that I found are 12 and 15 lines respectively. But they're all single words, not phrases, because I was using the mathematical word list as my thing to be checking words against in the code. I think a great and challenging next project could be to like try to write phrases. I mean, there's an unlimited number of things you could say within Shakespeare's sonnets according to the avion constraint. And another question, have you submitted any of these to the function repository? No, I could consider doing that. I mean, you're welcome to, the notebook is available to be downloaded and none of the code is very long or intense. But yeah, maybe I'll think about packaging some of it up. Could be a nice little poetry collection. Yeah. Great. Those are all of the questions that I see. Oh, I should look at the chat. Let's see. Great. Fun. Thank you for all of the comments in the chat. Poetic cryptography. Yes, exactly. Great. Well, again, please feel free to get in touch via email or somewhere in the conference. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, end of the conference. Thank you again.